it's going to be current state process mapping. If the client wants to do that, kind of really do a visual overhaul and showing how long is this process really taking. Because somebody can come to me and say, hey, it takes me, an hour and a half to do this one process, when, I know my friend at another city, it takes them 15 minutes because they're on a new ERP system. We can actually take that and do a visual diagram to like show everybody like, hey, here's the, for example, one of my clients, they have a process that they do every single day. I went through, did a process map with them, and they couldn't believe it because it was about, I think, 183 steps that they were doing. And it's just so constant and repeating that they're used to doing it. But when you put it out on a map, they're like, oh my goodness, this is insane. It shouldn't take 183 steps to do this one small thing. Like, we're not trying to solve world hunger. We're trying to do a standard report and triple check something is all. So I would say that's some of the key points for phase zero. It's more of, let's go from talking about we don't like our ERP system to let's get some actual data, some actual, evidence for that. So that way that's going to help you craft and figure out what you want to do for the future. How do you want it to look in the future?
Yeah, David, I agree that you gave a very good technical answer, and I'm going to go a little bit softer skill side. I think a lot of it lies in the people, right? How well can you get to know the people, get to know their pain points, and if you talk to them, they're gonna share their experiences, and that's where we can learn more. Because yes, a mapping session is great and they're needed, but if you really sit down with different levels of the organization, that's where you find the different pain points at those different spots as it moves through a process. Not too long ago, I got to go out to a county, and it was extremely valuable experience because I got to talk to people that I don't normally see on these meetings, or maybe have their cameras off that I don't get to talk to. So I think that's really important, is just getting to know those people, and then taking what you learn from them and how can we apply it going forward.
Absolutely. I think RFPs should do their best to tell a good story, right? When I'm looking at RFPs that are released into the world on a weekly basis, I am looking for a good story and a good snapshot of where the organization is at in this digital transformation journey, so that I am able to tailor my response to them, and also my resources and my budget, right? So I think that a good RFP should tell a good story and should provide a good snapshot of where the organization is at that place and time, right? So what do you all think? How important do you think it is to be vendor agnostic during any of this, right? We see it all the time. I see, competitors of ours who they market that they're vendor agnostic, but then when it really gets down to the wire and you see which vendor they go with, typically it's not agnostic. It's not an agnostic approach. So how important is that to you all on the delivery side, that we always remain agnostic?
Yeah, I think it is absolutely critically important, especially if it's you go out to these conferences. A lot of our clients will attend these conferences. These vendors will be there, and they'll even provide like a small system demo. It's probably like 5-10 minutes long, and something's on the vendor floor. But those 5-10 minutes are meant to just purely wow you. It's nothing that's wrong with the system or nothing that doesn't necessarily work well for your department. So staying agnostic instead of taking, hey, I saw X vendor at this conference, I want to go with them. If you stay agnostic, you're able to go through the checks and balances, go through every single piece of the system and see that it's going to work for your organization. They could be showing you one thing that's like, hey, this is revolutionary for our department, but for the finance department, the module that's in there, it does not work at all for them. So staying agnostic with that, not making those predetermined notions is going to be really important to assess the systems and see which one's going to work the best for everybody involved with your department.
Yeah, that's right. And I don't fall for the flashy stuff. That's kind of my advice there. Like, they're going to show you the best part of their system, the thing that they're built for. But you got to keep in mind, a lot of these, when we're doing ERP implementation, it's, finance, HR, payroll. And you can't just, because, they have a really good solution for one of those, you can't leave the rest of your departments in the dust, because in the end, it all connects. And so, again, if you have your superstar athlete, but you don't have anybody that can throw to him, for example, it doesn't matter. So you got to make sure that it's the best solution overall for you as an organization, not just for one department.
Isaac, you bring up a great point. You said, you can't leave any other departments in the dust. And I know from a delivery perspective, that's probably really hard to navigate when you all are doing the scoring and you're working with the clients, because maybe this project is very finance heavy and finance is leading the charge, and they are really gung ho on X product. And then you have HR who sometimes doesn't have a seat at the table. Like, how do we help clients navigate that?
Yeah, I mean, I think the easiest answer is it goes back to the people, right? Stakeholders. So you're gonna have, your main project sponsor, and they might be part of finance, like you said. Um, but again, if I know those people, if I understand who my stakeholders are, who's affected by the project, it's our job to also understand their needs and keep that in mind as we're going through the process.
Yeah, absolutely. And to kind of build off that, Isaac, sorry, Megan, I know that you're probably about to
No.
ask a follow-up question with that. I think a really, really important part is to identify that executive sponsorship for the project, the glue that's going to kind of hold everything together. Because at times, and it's always, everybody wants the better for their department. They also want the betterment for the overall, of course. It's not everybody necessarily being selfish, but you can fall into a little bit of a tug of war. This system's a lot better for our department as opposed to this department. So defining that executive sponsorship, having those open conversations and discussions really helps. I not necessarily say ease the water, but kind of get everybody together as a team. Kind of like Isaac said, he gave a great analogy. I'm a big sports guy. If you have a star quarterback and you don't have an offensive line, it's not really going to matter, unfortunately. He's not going to be able to throw the ball. So you want to make sure that every single department is well supported by this new system, whether you go a single source system or a best of breed. But that's where that executive sponsorship, I think, comes in very, very critical, because they're kind of the glue that holds everything together internally for the client, for their organization. So they can kind of be your champion to make sure that everybody gets, exactly what they need.
Yeah, no, I love that analogy too, especially since fantasy football is gearing up. I mean, I can go even further and talk about the Miami Dolphins, right? When Tua is in, Devon Achan does a great job, but when Tua is hurt, he does not. He's garbage. So great analogy, Isaac. I really like that, and I like how you guys tied it back to executive sponsorship. That's really awesome. We might have to do like some kind of live stream where we do like a mock draft or something, and
I was
talk
about
about
to say we need to mock
facets
draft.
of ERP. I don't know how we can do that, but anyway, I think we should. So let's talk about you. We've talked about leaving departments in the dust. There could be a solution to that, and it's the idea of best of breed. So how do we help our clients? How do we help educate them on what best of breed could mean for them? And then how do we help them understand if that language needs to be put in the RFP document?
Yeah, I think it starts definitely with an upfront conversation as far as defining those requirements. Is it multiple departments that are having issues, and you can kind of determine, okay, these departments, most modern ERP systems support them pretty well, or are the problems very, very unique, very, very particular that you might need to look at best of breed? It's going to be having those conversations up front. The minute you start your current state discovery, you start getting some information as far as what's going on currently. That's when you start having that conversation with the executive sponsorship to figure out what are you going to exactly be targeting. We're looking to go one single system, or are we looking to go best of breed? And I know a lot of times in the RFPs, we'll sit there and say, hey, if you want to propose a all-in-one solution, we're more than happy to view that. We'll also accept some best of breed, or if you have vendor partners that you're working with to help supplement some other modules, including that language, kind of keeping a little bit of those options open, because there's some times where it's not always 100% defined through that current state discovery process. We are going best of breed, period, end of story. So when you're going out to RFP, you want to make sure that you get a lot of responses, but B, you have a lot of options to pick from. The last thing you want to happen is send out an RFP and get 3 proposals, and now you only have 3 systems to choose from. You're kind of putting yourself in a corner right there. You want to make sure you keep your options open and what's going to be best for you overall.
Yeah, Dave, you kind of hit it there with just hit it up front, right? If you are looking for a finance system, okay, great, we can do that. But make sure that we know where those gaps are going to be later, and so that we can kind of prepare for them as we go through the process. Just be prepared with other options, or just know some things that might need a little bit of time that we could invest, and just not letting those things slip through the cracks or get ignored.
Yeah, we had a situation recently where there was an RFP that was released that the language in it was a little bit misleading, which shocker, they sometimes always are, but there was language around a single system integrator, right? They wanted best of breed, but they also wanted a single system integrator, right? And some of the best of breed, I mean, they don't have SSIs, right? And so they're going to have to get on a bid with one of these major players, and that's not always a good thing. So I just wanted to bring that up and talk about that a little bit, because you don't want to, like Dave said, you don't want to pigeonhole yourself. You don't want to put yourself in a box to where these vendors, when you release the RFP, they they don't know how to respond, or they can't respond because you put that language in there. So thoughts on that piece, Dave or Isaac? A lot of these best of breed vendors can't go after, a project with one of the bigger solutions because, they're sometimes all encompassing. So they're really competing, and it makes it harder for them. So how do you avoid that?
Yeah, I would say a good way to avoid that is when you're starting this process, it's really keeping that open mind and not necessarily talking from the vendor agnostic side that we already hit on. It's keeping an open mind to looking at new solutions that are going to be coming down the road. Like you said, you definitely have some market knowledge as far as going to these conferences and everything. But when you get to the proposals, you get to the actual seeing what people are going to propose as far as cost, implementation timeline, support that they're going to offer. You want to make sure that you kind of keep your options open a little bit with that. If you have a very, very set specific thing that needs to be in that RFP, that's absolutely fine. But if you have the possibility, let's try and keep kind of an open mind as far as, how we're going to approach that. So that way you do avoid that pigeonholing of yourself, because the last thing you want to do is go through this long process to draft an RFP, get it out on the street, and then what comes of it is not necessarily what you're really hoping for. There's a lot of work that goes into this, a lot of manpower, not only necessarily from the consultant side, but also from the client side. They've been in, tons of meetings. They've taken time away from their day to kind of pursue this project. You want to make sure that outcome, those proposals, you should be excited when you get them.